let's get some more inspiration now where to start, because we are going to visit a state of green, where we'll get the inspiration from a state, from a country that is really, as I've already said, way ahead of us when it comes to sustainability and circulation as such. So when I speak about sustainability, for example, in Denmark, only 3% of waste ends on a landfill, and 70% of waste is recycled and reused as a raw material for production or as a nutrition for agriculture, or probably energy source. And as the mission of the State of Green is to connect, inspire, and share. And I'm happy to have the chance to get inspired by our first guest speaker, because now we were only opening the topic, who is Charlotte Gjedde, Head of Partnerships at State of Green. Charlotte, welcome, and please inspire us.
Thank you so much, Michaela, and thank you for that kind of introduction. I will do what I can to inspire you today. So again, thank you for the introduction. And as said, I will just give a short presentation of Denmark, our green transition, because that's what we are also focusing on when we talk about the circular economy, that it's part of a larger green transition that we are facing not only in Denmark, but also across Europe and the world. So how can circular economy also talk into this green transition that we're seeing? As said, my name is Charlotte Gjedde, and I'm heading our partnerships in State of Green. So just shortly to begin with, what is State of Green? State of Green is a so-called public-private partnership, and we work to promote Danish green solutions to international stakeholders. So hopefully also the people on this call, as you can see, and being the mix of public and private, somewhere in between, that's where we are located. And the reason why that's also important when we talk about the green transition is, at least from the Danish perspective, an important part of our green journey so far is also the very close ties and collaboration between the public sector, the public legislators, and the private sector and solution providers. So those close ties is also how our organization is built. I'm not going to go too much into this because we want to talk about the solutions I'm going to show, but this is just so you understand what it means that we have the Danish government and business organizations in our board of directors. And then we have some of the key players in Denmark providing the solutions in the green transition. You might have heard of some of them. And they are also, of course, working within the fields of circular economy, because circular economy is a very broad theme and a broad scope. So it's both in the production lines, it's in waste handling, it's how we also get the consumers to make more circular choices. So it's definitely also a trend that's cross-cutting the partners that we're working with in State of Green. And I would just advise you all to, if you want to learn more about solutions that we have in Denmark, we have a stateofgreen.com, which is a one-point entry for both the Danish companies working within the field, but also the many cases and solutions where they have shown how they work within the green sectors. But enough about State of Green. I'm just going to give you a short story of where this actually all started in Denmark, because of course we see us as one of the front runners when we talk about the green transition, but it has not always been like this. It started back in the 1970s, where Denmark, like the rest of the world, was hit by the oil crisis, but Denmark was hit quite hard because we were 99% dependent on imported energy, including oil. So it hit our economy and socioeconomics frames quite hard. So the legislators, the society and government decided we need to look at alternative fuels, and not only because of climate and the environment. That wasn't really the driving force, but just as much because we wanted to have a more robust economy and energy system where we will not be hit by a crisis like we saw in the 70s. And back then, as you can see, we have some numbers. We have only 2% of renewable in our mix, so we were definitely not the front runners back then. And then you're going to see that these numbers are going to change a bit when we jump forward. But what just to sum it all up in one slide, because I don't have that much time, it's basically that in Denmark we've been able to, since the 1970s, and this is the 1990 benchmark that you're also using in the international frameworks, is that we have been able to decouple our economy since the 1970s. So through legislative measures, setting ambitious targets, introducing energy efficiency standards, the build out of also especially wind energy, having a different heating system and getting a district heating system. And then, as you can also see, having a more efficient water system. What we've been able to do here, you can see, is that our GDP has grown, while at the same time our energy consumption has been stable and more or less the same. And our water consumption and CO2 emissions has actually been decreasing. So that we in Denmark, and this is also the case in many other countries, but the fact that you're able to create a growth that is green is key to make the green transition successful, and also to make sure that other jumps on board this train, that it's not the expensive choice, it's not the hassle to make a green choice. It's actually something that makes sense when you look at the numbers, at least. And today, in 2019, these numbers are from, we have over 30% of renewable energy in our energy mix. And a big part of that is biomass in our heating system. I said we have a lot of wind energy in our electricity system, both in offshore wind and especially also onshore wind. We do have some sun, not a lot in Denmark, but the sun that we do have, we take advantage of. And then, as you also can see, we actually also have waste as part of our energy mix. So I'm going to tell a bit more about that, but what it definitely means is that we are using the waste as a resource, and I think that is key in this. And then when looking forward, what we are aiming to do is that we want to have, of course, more renewables. And in 2030, we want to, Denmark has set a target to reduce our CO2 emissions by 70% since the 1990s. And that is, of course, also ambitious, but also the fact is that we don't have all the solutions to reach this target yet. So we are looking a lot into climate plans in Denmark right now. How do we reach the target? What needs to be done? And also international collaborations. How can we learn from each other in order to also reduce the CO2 emissions in Denmark even further? Then you can also see that we in 2030 aim to have increased our water savings, but also importantly, we aim to have 60% of our household waste recycled in 2030. So that's not about total waste, but of the household waste. Yeah, and then 2050, even further down the road, Denmark aims to be a fossil-free society. Put an end to our oil and gas extraction and the use of it. We want to produce more renewable energy than we consume in Denmark, so we can also export it to our neighbors. Then what is going to be the focus for the next many years is how we decarbonize the agricultural sector, the transportation sector, and our buildings, because these are the sectors that we have not yet decarbonized. So we have come a long way in Denmark. We have introduced a lot of green solutions, but there is a lot of energy, water resources still used in these sectors. And then we want to move towards a circular economy. And as also, I think it was Jana who said this, that it's not only a plan you just implement, it's actually an entire paradigm shift in our society. It's going to affect all of society, that we want to have a circular economy instead of linear economy. So now deep diving just shortly into the circular economy, if I still have time, or otherwise, Michaela, I hope you will interrupt me. Yeah,
you still have time. We are fine.
Good. So when talking about circular economy in Denmark, at least, we see them where we have some different areas that we're talking about this. Of course, the whole waste sector is a big part of us talking about circular economy in Denmark, both in terms of waste prevention, waste incineration, because as you saw, a bit under 10% of our energy, of renewable energies actually come from incinerating waste, and then taking that energy into both producing heating and electricity. It's also about recycling, reuse, upcycling, and then also industrial resource efficiency and in the industrial symbiosis thinking, which I'm also going to talk a bit more about. But this is what we are aiming to do, and what this event is also going to be about, moving from a linear to a circular economy. And this is what we are trying to explain in a very simple way. But as you can see in the linear economy, it's much about thinking you have a life cycle, and then the end of life cycle, that's the product has ended its life, basically. Then moving towards the recycling economy, when you're thinking more about, can products be used again, and thinking about can we use them in maybe other value chains. And then lastly, circular economy, which is how can we avoid even producing waste in the end, and prolonging the lifespans of the different products and elements that we use in our society. As you already said, Michaela, approximately 70% of our waste in Denmark is actually already recycled, which is really good. But also, just to be honest, Denmark is also one of the countries in the EU producing the most waste per capita. So although we do recycle a lot, we also have a responsibility, because we also produce a lot of waste. As you can also see, a big part of it is also going to incineration. So the waste that is not being recycled, we incinerate this, and then produce electricity and heat for our heating system and electricity system, of course. And then only 3% ends up in the landfill. And of course, we have the 1%, as in most waste trends in Europe, is that special treatment, dangerous, hazardous, and so on, that you cannot do any of the other elements with. Yeah. In Denmark, we have I talked a bit about it before, but we have in 2020 introduced a new plan. It's in Danish here, as you can see, but it's the climate plan for a green waste sector and circular economy. And that was also the result of a climate partnership we have in Denmark, one of 13 climate partnerships where the Danish government set down the private sector, invited the private sector to come with their recommendations on how we could reduce CO2. So the private sector has actually contributed to this legislation on the climate plan for the green waste sector. And some of the plans, as you can see here, is that it aims to be climate neutral in 2030. We want to have a 30% reduction in our waste quantity. And then we want to increase the recycling and also just the handling of plastic waste, making sure that it's sorted out from our incineration and used more. Yeah, so that's just some of the areas. The last slide I have here is also that a big part of the waste handling in Denmark comes out to the citizens. So we want to recycle more, and we want to reuse more. And to do that, we need to make sure our waste is sorted. So this is in Danish. As you can see, all the names of the different fractions. We are going to have 10 different fractions are in Danish, but I'm actually pretty sure that most of you have an idea of what they mean because they have very easy, understandable icons. And I think that's also an important element because it needs to be very understandable and easy for the citizens to sort their waste. If it's too complicated and they are afraid of doing it wrong, then there's a risk that they won't do it at all. But this is a new plan for Denmark in order to make it easier for citizens to sort their waste, and therefore the waste fractions are at the citizens' houses. So I live in an apartment in Copenhagen, and in our backyard we have these. That there's going to be these 10 different bins that we are going to sort our waste in. So yeah, that's also a way of including the citizens in sorting the waste. So that was actually all from me, and for all of you who want to deep dive more into how we understand circular economy in Denmark, but also different cases and solutions, I would advise you to go and have a look at our white paper on circular economy, where you can see solutions both from waste, from industry, from buildings to across the different value chains. So that was all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. We have some time for questions, luckily, which is great because you've started with describing what the state is green state for, and it's a public-private partnership. What is the role of the public part, and what's the one for the private part?
Thank you, and great question. So we as an organization, we are basically a branding organization, a promotion organization. But when we talk about the public and private part, both in terms of the green transition and the circular economy, is of course the interplay, but that the public part and legislation part, they set ambitious targets, first of all, but also very importantly, long-term targets, so that the private sector and investment communities, they have time to develop the technologies and solutions necessary, but also that in Denmark, at least, we are going to be safe that these targets are not going to change, although we might get a new government. Because the targets in Denmark, 8 out of 9 of the parties are behind it. So it's going to keep being the same plans. So long-term, stable legislations, that's ambitious. That's the public role. And the private sector role is, of course, develop the technologies, develop solutions, implement the solutions, and very importantly also develop the innovations, because that's where the private sector can contribute very actively to circular transition as well.
I think that's very, very important. The long-term targets that are supported by the wide range of politicians, not only from the leading party right now. That's a great thinking, which we miss here, unluckily, even though probably when it comes to sustainability, it will be changing, hopefully. Where to start? You had the oil crisis in the 70s as the wake-up call, as you called it. But what should be the wake-up call now for the others?
Yeah. So it's a good question. Also a bit difficult because in Denmark, I mean, as said, you can see both in the political parties, you can see it in society. Our last election, 7 out of 10 people voting, they had green transition and climate as the top priority for why and who they voted for. So in Denmark, it's already institutionalized. It's not we don't have to be woken up. Everybody is woken up. The question is not if there's a climate crisis, it's what to do about it. And I think it's the cases in many countries, but I think it's not about do we need to do something, but how do we do it in a sustainable and also economically way, but also in a just way. And that's a big discussion. How do we ensure just transition so people, they don't lose their jobs in the fossil heavy industries? How do we make sure that people are educated and ready to take on this transition? And how do we make sure that it's not distributed and skewed in a unequal way across the world. So I hope, but I could say not that objective in that I hope that the world has woken up, but what to do about it is the real question now, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And as you mentioned, even though so many people vote according to how the politicians take this topic seriously, you've already mentioned while having the presentation that you still produce really high amounts of waste per capita.
Yeah.
So there is a question on Slido. The problem is the huge amount of waste we produce. What do you think can help you to change that?
That's also a great question, and actually, as many probably already know, the waste produced is directly linked to your economic status. So the more money you get and the higher welfare you have, the more waste you produce. So I think it's a change of thinking, and what we're seeing in Denmark is that we're trying to have different incentives in order to make people sort their waste. That's one thing, having less waste. But I think there's limited to how much the citizens can do themselves. We need to look at how we design our products. Are they designed to be used again and again? And do we know how to do it in the right way? So I think there's a lot of education, but also the production lines, the value chains, they need to change. And so I think that's also one of the things that needs to be done, other than putting all the responsibility at the citizens, because I don't think that they can lift them themselves.
So as you mentioned, it's a problem of how we design things, how we design the product, that we probably think about the technical part of it, but we forget that afterwards we should reuse it, we should recycle the parts, and when they are connected, for example, in a mobile phone, it's usually unrecyclable because we cannot reconnect them. So I guess it all needs the complex rethinking of how we design things.
Yeah, especially that's definitely right. So just changing the design cycles and business cases, but also ensuring that we have the right data and transparency and know how to do this, because you might want to produce a really circular circular product and want to have, for instance, plastic, recycled or upcycled plastic, but we need to make sure that you have enough plastic to have that value chain, and that you also may be able to have your waste sold to another value chain. So connecting those value chains, I think we need to make sure that they are able to do that. And before having a product that's made out of recycled plastic, you need to have the plastic recycled and sorted in a waste chain. So it's a big and complex system that I'm not sure I have all the answers to, but definitely it's a larger paradigm shift in how we think about the design processes as well.
Definitely. I've read that the waste should be considered as a design flow. So meaning we should design products in a manner that make it possible to split up and recycle every small part of it. So probably that's the main change of thinking.
Yeah, I agree. And also just the fact, sorry for interrupting, but just saying, if we look at these products, I think it's also very much about education. Some products are meant to be reused again, but maybe the consumers don't know that they can reuse it. And I think also legislation is important here. I mean, the EU has banned single-use plastic, and that's forcing also both the citizens and the private sector to develop solutions that's different, because we cannot have single-use plastic. What is the new solutions that we should have instead then? Also pushing them a bit, I think it's probably necessary.
So taking all the citizens into the process of changing our behavior, not implying something from above.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you very much, Charlotte, for the inspiration and sharing your experience from Denmark. I think we really need to rethink how we behave and change the whole paradigm, change how we design things, change how we use them. So the whole, as you've mentioned, from production to consumption and to the waste treatment, and happy to see how it works in Denmark. And you even didn't mention that you have such a beautiful incineration plant.
Yes.
Just next to Copenhagen, where you can ski, and people just love that place. Here in Czech Republic, we don't really we are not really happy when somebody builds something like that, or like an incineration plant next to our house. But in Copenhagen, do you have it any close?
Sorry?
If you have it any close, the incineration plant that is visible from the whole Copenhagen.
Yeah. So what's the question? Sorry, if it's...
No, I was just asking about the incineration plant where you use all the waste and produce the heat and electricity for Copenhagen. That is it's a famous project because there is a ski slope on it, and it looks really great. I think even a Czech company worked on the glass surrounding of it.
Yeah,
so
okay.
I was just asking if you have it any close, if you how it is to have it close by, because here in Czech Republic we don't like to have incineration plants close by.
It's basically in the middle of the city, so people are living right next to it. And if you haven't visited it already, and also just it's the Copenhagen in Denmark, and people can ski on it, as you say. But what's unique about it is not only that it's a beautiful building, and they've made a park on the roof of the building of the incineration plant, but the reason why it's possible is because the technical solutions inside, and also the chimney on the plant, make sure that it doesn't smell, the smoke doesn't affect the neighbors, and that's also just the filtering technologies in that the smog is in no way affecting the neighbors. So it's I would say it's rather a good thing that it's that you're able to integrate such an important plant in the city by architecture, and also the technical solutions in the filtering of the smoke, of the incineration of the waste. Yeah, but it's a beautiful place, and I look forward to welcoming you all to Denmark soon, hopefully, so you can also visit.
So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.